All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes here. Just a chance for you to ask any questions you have about management, leadership, any frustrations or issues you're dealing with in the workplace. I try to put the principles and the theory of leadership and put them into some practical steps that you can take to get over some of your obstacles and your frustrations. So as we have some people jump on here, I want to let those that are tuning in after the live session know that there's still plenty of value that you can get from this. The questions are absolutely applicable, maybe not specifically to your situation, but you can often find corollaries to those. So Mozam, Cindy, always good to see you here. Manef, good to see you here as well. So the other thing that I wanted to mention is if you missed a chance to ask a question, you can always drop down in the comments section, ask a question there. I will get it on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. You can always private message me or email me, cm@cameronmorsey.com. And that's actually where we're going to start as we queue up some people here with some questions. John, good to see you here. First question comes in, and it's a tough one, tough situation. How do I lean into repairing a relationship with a direct report when they refuse to interact or meet with me? Basically, I'm under an unofficial stay-away order with no opportunity to repair or learn what I did that so severely pissed this person off. And I can't force a mediation. I can only request a mediation. So, while I don't like the way that this was handled by your organization at all, it's not a tenable sort of situation where you intentionally tell two people not to interact in any way, shape, or form, especially when it's a direct report and a supervisor. But quite frankly, it's two people that are sitting next to one another working together that can be just as much of a problem. Sam, glad to see you on board here. So the first thing that I would look to do is I would look, because you still have interactions. They just might not be verbal interactions with this particular team member. What I think you would want to do in this case is make sure that those nonverbal cues that you're sending are letting the person know that you're not holding any sort of grudge, that you are welcoming, interacting with them, that you appreciate their presence, all of those things, all of those little nonverbal cues. And be mindful and be careful of this, because this is a situation where when you don't know what pissed the person off and they are that irritated about it that it's become this formal thing, then they've really taken it way too far. I don't want to call them a drama queen or a drama king, but they have kind of an axe to grind or some issues. So you want to be mindful of that. But first and foremost, I would be reasonable, have good decorum with them in a more in just a more normal way. So act normal. If you want the relationship to be normal, you need to make sure that you are acting normal. Too many times we want the relationship to be normal, so we take extraordinary steps to see that it is normal, and that's not the way that you do it. That makes that relationship extraordinary in some way, shape, or form. The other thing that I would look to do is if you have a trusted subordinate or a trusted peer, so this doesn't get back to the person or all of a sudden become this big thing, I would ask them what they think might have caused the rift between you and this other person. So you may not be able to get it directly from the individual, and if you can't contact them or can't discuss these things with them, you can discuss it with some trusted people around them and see if that gives you just a little bit of insight. I would be mindful of letting some time go with this. Let the fever pitch kind of tone down just a little bit, but act normal with nonverbal cues towards them. See if there is something that everybody else understands that you might have done wrong, and that can hopefully get this on the road to repairing that relationship. I wouldn't go the formal route of mediation at this point because, quite frankly, that just justifies this person's behavior, and I'm taking a little bit of a logical leap that their behavior is a bit unjustified. So I wouldn't legitimatize that right now. Maybe let 2, 3, 4 weeks go by and then look to go through the mediation process. I hope that helps you out there. Maria, so good to see you on board here. Cindy, I don't actually get up to Canada nearly as much as I'd like to, or Edmonton in particular, but I will be rooting against the Oilers whenever my Golden Knights play against you. But hopefully there's an opportunity at one of these points for me to get up there. I've had some coaching clients up in Alberta as well. So those that have jumped on, if you have any questions, drop down into the comment section. Happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, I do have a few that I received through email and through private message. And next one is just kind of short and sweet, and I'm looking for if you posted an article or video about issue management processes. And I actually answered this already, that no, I don't have anything from an issue management process, but I did want to discuss that just a little bit here. So issue management processes are kind of the step-by-step, the checklist, the playlist that you go through when something happens, when there is an issue that you're facing. And so it's a way of memorializing kind of lessons learned. And that's what I wanted to get at. I personally don't like a structured environment like that, but that is a personal opinion. What works for me doesn't work for, you or anybody else. So I did want to throw that out there, that if you have common things that come up, what are the questions that you need to ask to diagnose those particular issues? So it's not a bad thing to formalize that into some sort of, like I say, checklist, playlist, whatever you want to call it. It's something that comes up in the book Decisive, which I will be discussing noon Pacific Standard Time on Friday. I encourage you to get into that discussion. There's some great stuff in this book on decision-making processes, and one of those was the playlist for certain situations that happen to come up. Advise on how to deal. Manif's got the question. More than 10 years as CEO. Advise on how to deal with him in meetings, face-to-face or by emails. One of the most important things, Manif, and Paul, so good to see you joined us here. One of the most important things when you're dealing with your boss or a CEO, especially when they're tenured and they probably have just a little bit of ego with them. First thing is to make sure that you're clear on what they care about. I mean, write it down, get it on paper. Too many times you say, oh, I know what they care about, and it's still a little fuzzy. Get crystal clear. What are the goals that they've set for the organization? What are the goals they've set for you? What are they always talking about? What bugs them? What is, if they have a board of directors, what is the board of directors on their case about? Those are all things that you want to get crystal clear on. Because when you interact with them, you want to phrase your ideas, your problems, your solutions in ways that address what they are most concerned about. That's something that's going to help you get your message across. The other thing is to be humble. Absolutely be humble. This is something we took from last week's discussion, the dichotomy of leadership and being humble and being a servant. So you want to make sure that you are making yourself available for them if they need help with something. You are offering your assistance, but more importantly, you are jumping on board and supporting their decisions where it's appropriate. Yes, you want to give pushback, but the pushback that you give on their ideas should be rare. And I'm talking like no more than 10% of the time would you push back on a particular issue. You need to make sure that you're being a great follower. That will also bring you in and gain the trust of this particular CEO. So be of service to them and make sure you're crystal clear on what they are prioritizing right now and what's on their mind. That's going to really help you get across to them and be a trusted individual for them. Maria, I do have ebooks. They're available on Kindle. Right now, I don't have any ebooks specifically on that, but you can always private message me. I can probably arrange a little something for you there. So just private message me, Maria. Thanks for the question. The next question I have is, I have an employee who is popular with other employees within my department. She offers good customer service, yet she is a gossip. No one can tell her anything, including customers, because she gets super loud. Management is wise to her pot stirring, but how do I, her supervisor, address this with her? When all else fails, and gossip is one of those big things that I recommend in this regard, but it goes for any sort of uncomfortable situation that you might be dealing with. The important thing is to simply be transparent with the person. Be upfront. I don't want to use the term, say, being blunt with them, but yes, I defer for you to be blunt with them as opposed to too soft with them in regards to the feedback that you have to give. So I would bring up two things. There's two things that are mentioned here. One, the person is a gossip. So, hey, just so you know, when you talk about this and this and this, it has this negative effect, and I'd like to see you address that. The other thing is the loudness. Hey, when somebody challenges you, you get really loud and it's really disruptive. So flat out, just throw it out there to the person. Now, the trick to this is to wait. That's right. I said wait to give them the feedback. You wait to give them the feedback until you see an incident where this behavior occurs. Until they gossip. Hey, just so you know, I heard that yesterday you were talking about this and this and this. This isn't true. If you have questions, bring them to me, that sort of thing. Hey, pull them aside after they get loud in the office. Hey, just so you know, if you could tone it down just a little bit, it's really distracting. And I know you don't mean it that way. And so you give them an out. I know you don't mean it that way, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. When you bring these things to people's attentions, a lot of times, I would say 50% of the time, the issue goes away right there because they aren't really aware of it, or they are just going along with what you allow them to do. So call it out to them. Call it out in a specific and timely instance with them. Maybe give them an out. Hey, I know you didn't mean it for it to come across this way. I know you don't intend for it to come across this way, but this is what it might be feeling like for other individuals. So you give them that out, and that's something that can truly help you addressing those difficult situations. And the ones that everybody sees in the office. And that's the big thing, is you will actually get a ton of respect from your other employees when you address those things that everybody sees, but that everybody has been tolerating for all of this time. Thanks, Angie. Appreciate that. And Maria, I'm glad that worked for you there. And yeah, private message me, by the way. Next question I have, and if anybody who's jumped on here, if you have any questions, drop down into the comments section. It'll show up on my chat screen over here, and I will go ahead and get that answered right away. How do you convince upper management to provide monetary benefits to high-performing employees? Great question, Mitch. Glad you like it. If you want to give your people a raise, if you want to create a bonus incentive monetarily, if you want to do anything that costs the company money, then you need to provide a return on investment analysis. What is the return? Businesses, organizations have no problem throwing an infinite amount of money at something if they are always getting a return on that money invested. So if you're looking to give a bonus incentive to salespeople, for instance, instituting that, what is the benefit that you're looking for? What is going to pay for that incentive? Because that's what's going to get across to upper management that they need to do something. What they don't want to do is they don't want a negative return where they are basically paying people more to do the same job they were doing before. That's not something that they are interested in. Find a way to show that there was a return to that. And so it might be that there's stretch goals. And so the idea is you're taking your superstars and you're actually building an incentive for them to exceed those expectations. Or one thing that I have seen with this is where you have an existing bonus structure in place, you actually decrease the overall bonus structure, you distribute it. So instead of it being a flat, say 10%, it's 6% if you hit this threshold, 8% if you hit this threshold, 10, 12, 14, 16. That's a great way of building in a stair-stepped sort of incentive that encourages those people that are already fantastic to do even better. So that'd be my big thing. If you're looking to ask for monetary incentive, if you're looking to ask for a raise personally, if you want to personally ask for a raise, what is the benefit that the organization is going to get from giving you that raise? Are you going to do more? Are you looking to take on extra responsibilities with that? Those are the sorts of things that can really help you drive that across the finish line and actually get that raise into place. Great question. Marty has the question, that is, I have not been good about holding employees accountable. How do I turn that around without going from 0 to 100 and seeming like a jerk? Marty, that's a great question, and I don't know whether it's the end of the third quarter here in the States, but I have been getting that question a lot. So you're not alone in this particular struggle. And this goes for those individuals who have taken over a department that has not been held accountable in the past. You don't, as Marty says, want to go from 0 to 100 and basically the wheels fall off at that point as everybody kind of rebels. So what you want to do, Marty, is you want to start with something that is simple and obvious. Two things on there. Simple and obvious, something that is easy for them to hold themselves accountable for and for you to hold them accountable to, but also something that's obvious that they need to be held accountable to. The example I use with this is attendance. So attendance, people might be supposed to be there at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and they're showing up at 5 past the hour, 10 past the hour, 15 past the hour. It's obvious. Everybody knows they're supposed to show up to work on time. And it is a little thing that you can go ahead and encourage them to, by holding them accountable, to address. So you actually just bring this up. You may shoot out an email. Hey, just so you know, I know we've all been lax on coming in on time. I've been late a few times. You bring yourself into this discussion as well. I do want to hold myself and everybody else accountable for showing up on time. It's important that we are all here to support one another, and that the person that showed up on time did what they were supposed to isn't penalized because they don't have the support of everybody else. So you give them the why behind it. Why is it important that everybody shows up on time? Why is it important? Even if it's a simple and obvious thing, why is it important? Reiterate that why to them. And then you start holding them accountable. And it may be, Marty, that you just do one thing a week. And so next week it is something else, something that is a little bit bigger and a little less obvious. And you just work from there on up. And so after 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks, what you'll find is these things start becoming easier because now you've created a culture of accountability where people know what they're supposed to do, and they know that you as their boss and their peers are going to be expected to follow along with that. So that's my big advice. I hope that helps you out there. And Charles, everything is about empowerment. I appreciate that comment there. Empowering your employees is one of the most important things that you can do as a leader for their development and your own development, because empowered employees work better, which gets you better results. Karina has our next question. It's, I was hired to run a warehouse, been in the position for 4 months. My direct manager has certain tasks for me to do, yet the owner of the company comes directly to me at times requesting me to do other tasks that contradict my direct manager. What should I do in this case so that I do not cause conflict? Karina, part of it is that you're going to want to create conflict here. That sounds counterintuitive. It's not what I want to do, but it is what it is. Because what you want to do is the CEO is superseding the owner. So the owner is superseding their managers, which is very common. If it's small, medium-sized businesses, this happens all the time where the owner just jumps over all the people that are there to help them to go directly to the person. What you want to do is after the owner gives you a directive that contradicts, what your manager says, then bring it to your manager's attention. Let them mediate that discussion between the two of them. Two things. A, it's not necessarily your role. You don't want to supersede the authority of your direct manager. But also what this does is this encourages the two of them to actually have the conversations they should be having before they come to you with those things. So I would bring it up as soon as the owner leaves. Go, okay, I'll get right to it and start working on it. But get in touch with your direct manager right away and say, hey, just so you know, the owner came in and took me in a completely different direction, which is where I'm going right now. But I wanted you to be aware of it because if you disagree with that, I know this goes against some orders that you've given before, you maybe want to have a discussion with the owner about that. And so let them have that discussion. Exclude yourself from that discussion. You are part of your direct manager's line of oversight. So the owner isn't going to think that you necessarily tattled. And maybe you call out to your direct manager if you don't think that they would handle a situation like that well. Maybe you don't call out to that, or you actually call out and say, hey, don't make it sound like I'm tattling on them. I just wanted to let you know what I'm doing right now and why it is that I'm doing it. It shows your manager respect, and it allows him to show the owner respect by having that discussion. Okay, I hope that really helps out, Karina. That's a tough situation to be in. And Titus, good to see you on here from YouTube. My goodness. Joe has our next question, and it is, there is some discussion over the best way to manage in my workplace. We work in sales in a hard retail environment where we experience a lot of rejection. Little praise, cutting of hours, removing of bonuses, incentives. If we don't meet target, cut hours next shift, or acknowledge improvement and accomplishment, incentives, positive reinforcement. What do you think? A mix of both, Joe. I mean, these don't have to be either or sort of decisions. You can have punishment for not meeting standards. And you give the reason why you have those in place, but you also want to incentivize great performers. The issue with only doing one or the other is oftentimes you're only managing one of the particular groups. So you have your poor performers, and your poor performers need to be disciplined perhaps for their poor performance. But that doesn't affect all of your superstars. They aren't even involved in that discussion. Likewise, your superstars want to be encouraged with more incentives, more recognition for what's going on, but that doesn't affect any of the poor performers that you have. So you want to come up with a mix of both because that addresses both areas. So pick your best ideas, maybe not even your most aggressive ideas in regards to punishment or in regards to recognition and incentives. And Put those together into a cohesive plan that addresses all of those areas so that your poor performers are getting recognized in a negative way for their poor performance, but they are also incentivized to increase their performance. Your superstars are set up to increase their performance based on the incentives, but they also understand that everybody is being held accountable because they see that punishment side. So in this case, you need a more holistic approach to it, holistic approach to it, where you are incentivizing and, for lack of a better term, you are punishing on either end of the particular spectrum. I hope that helps. If it doesn't, Joanne or Joe, go ahead, drop down into the comment section. We can keep this discussion going because this is a really good topic for everybody out there. Nisreen, so good to see you here. Sherry has our next question. Running assembly lines, how do you handle associates that constantly gossip and speak badly of others on the line? Sherry, when we talk about gossip, look for a specific instance. So the next time that you hear something is going on, pull the person aside and say, hey, I heard you were talking about Cameron in this particular way, and it's not good from a team perspective. It's not good from an overall health perspective. These are those situations. Gossiping, especially negative gossip, is something that everybody knows they aren't supposed to be doing, that everybody knows isn't healthy. And so calling this out directly to them isn't a surprise to them. And what it also does is oftentimes gossip, especially that negative gossip that kind of takes root in some organizations, is a form of bullying. And the way that you address a bully is you stand up to them. So simply calling it out to them will oftentimes make it go away right there, because all of a sudden they realize they can't get away with doing this behavior without some sort of repercussion. Having a discussion with you can be an embarrassment in regards to that. So having that clear discussion on what's going on. The other thing about gossip, and this is something I didn't address earlier when this kind of came up earlier in this live session, is that gossip takes root in an environment where there isn't enough communication and transparency into what everybody is doing and what the goals and direction of the organization are. So it would be a challenge to you, Sherry, at this point, if you have gossip that's flourishing in an assembly line environment. And I understand simple assembly line environment should be, that's where it would kind of flower. Make sure that you are letting people know where the goals are, where the performance is on a daily, hourly basis, what people are working on, what development opportunities do they have, what's going on. Give chances for them to get together and have discussions amongst themselves. Maybe it is that you split the lunches around so that they have to sit with other individuals at lunch and carry on conversations so they get to know one another. But look for ways to address communication. That's going to be the other way to minimize that gossip in that particular environment. No problem, Titus. Titus has our next question, and it's, I know I'm not as cool as guys with jobs, but I have group project and the leader keeps making insults towards me. So this works. It absolutely doesn't have to be a job-related thing. I want a non-violent way to solve this dilemma. What should I do? I would really look to going back to kind of the gossip thing, Titus. I would look to actually challenge this individual. So pick your moment, but when they insult you on something that doesn't make sense, say, I don't know where you're getting that. I do such and such and such and such. Or I don't know where you're getting that with this. I did exactly what you said. I don't know where you're getting this. So you stand up to them in some way, shape, or form. Again, that just knowing that they can't get away with it eliminates 50% of it. So pick your moment. It might not be the next thing that they insult you on. All right, but you find a moment and go ahead and push back a little bit with that. It may be something that's obvious or something where they go over the bounds and say, I don't really see where that has a place in this particular discussion. You're the team lead. How are you creating an environment like this? Maybe not quite that challenging to them, but where you know that everybody else who's in the room with you has kind of got your back. That can be a way of stepping up and pushing back just a little bit. But that would be my next course of action with you, Titus, is to do a little bit of pushback. And that goes for bullying bosses, bullying peers, anybody who's out there in the job environment or the educational environment. If you have those things that come up, give a little pushback and see what happens with it. Oftentimes that makes it go away. And if it doesn't, well, we can keep having discussions about it. Vina has the next question for us. And why does this generation of workforce need to be told constantly, good job? Well, Vina, here's the way that I always kind of flip it around. Wouldn't you like to be told good job all the time? what you want to do in this case, getting back kind of to a serious aspect of things, is you want to change it. So it's not good job that you are giving them. You're not giving them a pat on the back. You are giving them feedback on what they did right in this case and what impact it had on the operation. So it might be, hey, that was a really good job with that customer call. If we keep having calls like that, then people are going to keep coming back to our business. That was great. Because what you do is, in that case, it opens it up. That is the flip side of the coin to negative feedback. The problem with positive feedback and negative feedback for so many leaders is the positive feedback is very shallow. It's that good job. It's that pat on the back. The negative feedback, all of a sudden you're driving down into behaviors of what happened, what went into it, what the effects are, all of that. What you want to do is you want to flip that around. That negative feedback you want to make into positive feedback. And so I would change that good job, Vina, and I would start giving them positive feedback and reinforcement as to why what they did mattered to the organization. And then that opens up the negative aspects and it becomes very natural at that point. If you want to have easier, and a lot of us out there are it's very easy for us to give the positive feedback to people. That's what we like to do. But it's more difficult to give them the negative feedback as well. So what you want to do is, if you change that positive feedback into, instead of just a good job, something a little bit more detailed, it becomes more natural then to have the negative discussion as well. So that's my take on that here. Kind of like toddlers, sticker, good job. And Vina, and that is absolutely the case in many cases. In a lot of cases, you have immature individuals in the workplace. But one thing that I would counter with that, and I get concerned with this generational stereotype, because I'm from Generation X. When I hit the workforce, what was the label that they put on Generation X? Slackers. We were slackers. We were all in not tweed. We were all in flannel shirts, listening to grunge music, and we were slackers. That was what everybody thought of us. Every generation seems to think that the other generation that comes up after them has less work habit, that sort of thing. I think it's more on an individual basis. So treat them like individuals, and I think you'll see some of these stereotypes kind of bleed away. Or it may be that you have that slacker from Generation X that has just morphed itself into a millennial. I get it. Don't get me wrong, Vina. I totally get it too. So sorry to hear that, Connor. So sorry to hear that. And yes, I'll say a prayer. Moazam has the next question for us, and it's: when you are sure that you clearly deserve a raise, your counterparts at the same level are clearly at higher salaries, even though your boss is especially calling you out as an example because of your exceptional performance, but chooses to ignore and get you that raise despite multiple reminders, what do you do when you love your job? Well, Moazam, you kind of answered the question. You love your job. So yes, you keep pushing for that. But in so many of these cases, you've done the part of giving them the reminder, telling them you're interested in a raise, telling them you think you deserve a raise. Try actually articulating the reasons why you deserve a raise to them. Give them some backup, because it may be that they want to, but so many times your boss doesn't actually hold the purse strings. They have to go to their boss or their boss's boss to get a raise. They need backup, because that individual may not know that Moazam is an absolutely fantastic employee who does a wonderful job. And so give them some backup with that. The other thing to do is look for opportunities to take on additional responsibilities. One of the best ways to get a raise or to get a promotion within an organization is to create some sort of hybrid role, where you take on responsibilities that are above your pay grade or that blend into, your manager's role a little bit. Maybe you create a lead position, and that gives them an excuse to give you that promotion as well. Lastly, and I know you love your job, maybe it is a situation where you look around and see where things are at. Maybe you look around and see what other opportunities might be out there. There might be opportunities that really kind of instill some passion. And so that might be a way to go as well. That also might put your mind at ease. The last thing, and I'll make one last comment and move on from this. I do get concerned sometimes when people feel like they know what other people are making. In many cases, you're right on that. But as a boss who has had people come to them with a ton of false information about what other people make, I realize that that information may not be exactly as accurate. So realize, trust but verify. Make sure you're checking those resources that you have there to get that information. Joe has kind of a follow-up. I think my main issue is that changes have been brought in that mean that even the superstars are struggling to meet targets. So even superstars who usually achieve incentives are missing the mark, becoming demoralized. So in this case, Joe, what I'd look at is I'd actually take it a step back. So instead of looking at an incentive, or a set of punishments that you're looking to put in place to motivate behavior, what I would look to do is I would work on more engagement on your part, more empowerment, and more teamwork with your team. I would look to have best practice meetings. So what is it that, you take your 5 superstars? Well, I almost guarantee they have 5 different ways that they are achieving those phenomenal results, and they can learn from one another and then push that down to other areas of the organization. Maybe it's that you spend 5 minutes at the end of the day. Okay, what was your best call? What was your best sales interaction that you had today? And what was your worst sales interaction that you had today? So everybody throws out their best and their worst. And what that does is that gives them another chance to learn from one another, also to support one another. So I would actually look to take this back a step and look to get more team involvement, more employee engagement amongst themselves and with you. And that can be something that hopefully elevates them to be able to meet these new thresholds. So when you're in an environment where you have your expectations are rising up and they're rising to the point where everybody's starting to drown, then you need to get together as a team and try to work together to improve everybody's performance. All those little tips, all those little tricks, all that little support builds up over time. And so that would be my big advice for you in that situation, Joe, and that's never any fun. I'm glad it's working. All right, I am caught up. So if you have any questions, drop down in the comment section, throw it in there. I will answer it almost in real time. Otherwise, I've got a couple that I need to get back to. There you go. I'm new in my role and trying to use your advice on accountability and trying to bring back the expectations of organizational culture. I'm making some headway, but the other managers seem to either not care or are lax or derail my efforts. How can I get them to assist and be four-wall accountable? So when you are the person that is holding everybody accountable, but you're the only supervisor that's holding everybody accountable, that's something that can absolutely take place. What you want to look to do in those cases is find ways to systematize or create tools to make it easy for everybody else to follow along with that. This comes up a lot when you're doing something a particular way, but your boss isn't holding anybody else accountable to those particular standards. What you do is you provide your boss, or in this case, you provide your other team members with the tools. Have you given checklists to your team? Are you doing one-on-one meetings? Can you tell them things that you did correct in the past? Those are all things that you can address, but look to find ways to make it easy for them to hold their team accountable, to bring them up to the same expectations and the same standards that you have. You have already paved the way, so now maybe it's time to actually spend a little bit of time bringing some people back with you to be able to meet that. That's a great question. Love that question. I've got one more question here, so if you have any questions, drop down into the comments section. I will get to it in real time. Otherwise, this will be the last question for today. What can you share about the work climate as a leader when companies are reducing staff? So what I can share about a work climate when there's a staff reduction is it's not particularly great. The most important thing when you have that staff reduction taking place is to be quick and honest with your communication. Be as transparent as far as the process is concerned. I went through the Great Recession and a huge downsizing in my organization, and the most important thing to do is let them know, well, what's the criteria for somebody being let go? Is it straight seniority? That's one that takes place all the time. Is it some sort of performance metric so people can see where they're at and they can gauge it? Let them know what the goals of the downsizing are. Let them know the reason why the downsizing had to take place. So really open up the discussion. This is an uncomfortable discussion, but what happens is your team appreciates that you gave them the information and you are cutting out as much as possible that fear of the unknown. The big issue is people have a fear of the unknown. It's wired into our brains. to have that. And so you want to cut that back as much as possible by feeding them as much information. Maybe you even have one-on-ones with everybody and you say, hey, I just wanted to ask, what are your concerns? And they'll say, I don't have any right now. You can bring up the 1 or 2 concerns that are obvious that other people have brought up to open up the discussion. But really focus on communication. That is what makes the work environment tolerable in those particular cases. So with that said, if I don't have any more questions, I'm going to sign off for today. Tomorrow, I'll be doing it in the morning. I want to say 9:30 if I'm not mistaken. I'll be tackling it in the morning. And if you have any questions in the meantime, again, you can drop down in the comments. I'll pick them up from there, or you can direct message me or email me at cm@cameronmorrissey.com. Blast talking with y'all, and good luck with everything out there. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.